grow room 2 is full of shiitake mushrooms. We're going to go ahead and harvest them today and get them boxed up in refrigeration. Go grab some produce boxes. So yeah, we harvest all of our mushrooms into these nice little produce boxes, and they help keep them fresh and keep them from getting damaged. I use this as a little cleanup bucket for when I'm harvesting my mushrooms. I can put any debris off to the side. Just wheel my stainless steel table right in front of my grow room, and I'll just lock the wheels so it's not moving around on me. There we go. And I'll turn the humidity down while I'm harvesting. Right before harvest, it's recommended to kind of cut the humidity down just a little bit. That way your mushrooms, basically you get a longer shelf life out of them. All right. So yeah, shiitake's a really interesting mushroom. It's one of my favorite to grow. It's also one of the most labor-intensive harvests, where you have to cut each mushroom off one by one. So yeah, we have some shiitake mushrooms right here that are ready to go. I like to harvest them right as the cap begins to open up, but it doesn't open up completely. And so yeah, some of these blocks are really covered with shiitake mushrooms. So yeah, we'll go ahead and harvest these right now, because they are ready to go. So yeah, these mushrooms are growing off of a mix of oak hardwood sawdust that I've supplemented with about 15 to 20% organic wheat bran. So that organic wheat bran gives the mushrooms mycelium a nice nutritional boost to kind of take over the sawdust and increase your yield. So you could just grow on just oak hardwood sawdust with no supplementation. That actually would make it a little bit easier for the cultivator, because you wouldn't need the sterilization process, which we utilize due to the high nutrition in our substrate to kill off any kind of competitor organisms that can outcompete our mushroom mycelium. So when you're just using like an oak hardwood sawdust with no supplementation, you could just pasteurize it or just pour boiling 170 to 180 degree water over your sawdust to let it sit for about an hour at that temperature. And then at that point you can let it cool and inoculate with some grain spawn or sawdust spawn that's grown out with a shiitake culture. You can buy spawn, or if you don't know how to make spawn, you can buy it somewhere and just use that to inoculate your substrate and start growing your own mushrooms and start getting a bit of a glimpse of the process and start familiarizing yourself with the fruiting process and the colonization process. Understand the mycelium and how it develops and learn from it. So this block's just been harvested, so I'll just put it back. And I just keep grabbing blocks and just keep cutting away. And I'll weigh each box out to 5 pounds. And then when I'm harvesting these mushrooms, I just cut right at the base, as close to the block, but not trying to cut into the block. So I like this strain because it does have small stems or short stems. Both of these strains do. And yeah, I grow shiitake 3782 and 3790, which are just two really cool shiitake strains. 3782 is the one that you're seeing right here, and it grows these nice, less dense of a cap than the 3790. So this cap is really good for just like crisping up, getting to like a nice light crisp faster, or just less of a dense cap. So 3790 is real meaty, real dense. All right. So yeah, this is what I mean by just takes longer to harvest. I'm yielding about 2 pounds per block, and takes me a few minutes to harvest that 2 pounds as compared to growing oyster mushrooms. You can harvest 2 pounds in just one pull. So there's some benefits to both. If you have the space to grow shiitake, then that's awesome. It takes up more space, and the amount of time it takes to grow one crop of shiitake, you can produce 4 crops of oyster, or probably lion's mane too. So yeah, this is just a pretty easy harvest. For the most part, pretty basic. Just trimming the mushrooms off as clean as possible, and if you wanted to, you could actually second flush these blocks. That would involve just letting these blocks completely dry out for about 2 weeks. So if you grow them in a grow room, you could just shut your humidity off for about 2 weeks. And then at that point, you would rehydrate your blocks with a nice dunk in some cold water. Rehydrate them for about 6 to 12 hours. Some people do 24 hours. I think that could be a bit long. So just be careful with that. And then at that point, you can just put them back in the grow room, hose them down, and within a few days, mushrooms will begin to reappear, and you can get another crop and continue that process until your blocks become spent. Here we just do the one flush. We get most of our yield on our first flush. And then at that point, we just recycle the blocks into compost or whatnot. So yeah, the shiitake mushroom mycelium is really interesting. You can notice how the block is completely brown, basically. Shiitake mushroom is the only one that really does this. It starts out white, and then after about 2 weeks, it begins popcorning. So you get this nice bumpy surface. And then after that, it starts to brown and ripen. So we let them go for about 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the strain, before we even put them in the grow room. That ensures you get a really nice crop of shiitake. If you put them in there when they're still white, you're not going to get as much of a yield, and the shiitake is not going to be as top quality. So as with any mushroom, recommended preparation is to cook your mushrooms. Mushrooms should never be eaten raw, and if you do eat them raw, you're not getting any nutritional content from them. So I like to prepare these just like sauteing them, a simple saute for 15 to 20 minutes over medium heat, in addition with some garlic and a little bit of oil, and you can also top it off with a little white wine and tamari. Makes a great addition to like a stir fry or a rice dish, in addition to a ramen or anything like that. It's really good. Shiitake's very, very tasty mushroom, and it's also very medicinal. It's good at boosting the immune function, and it's been used as a food and medicine for quite a while. It's also commonly used in like miso soups, stuff like that. You can find it in a lot of like Pan-Asian cuisine. It's a classic gourmet mushroom. It's also the most cultivated gourmet mushroom in the world as far as wood-loving gourmet species go. And it's a hardwood-loving mushroom, of course. Shi meaning oak and take meaning mushroom. It's originated on oak trees. So by cooking mushrooms, you're able to unlock nutritional value by breaking down this chitin layer that the mushrooms are made up of. The cell wall of the mushroom is made up of a chitin-like material, so our bodies can't digest chitin. Heat treatment is necessary to break down the cell wall enough to where our bodies can access the nutrients. One experiment is, you can eat a mushroom raw and it basically just won't come out digested. You can't digest it, so really interesting stuff. When you're eating fresh mushrooms or people love getting fresh button mushrooms in their salads, and you're not even getting any nutritional content from those except the water that they have. So cooking of all mushrooms is necessary to retain that nutritional benefits or those nutritional goodies that mushrooms can offer us. So yeah, we always cook about 15 to 20 minutes on medium heat, or up until the gills get like a caramelization or a light browning to them, and that's where I find they're really tasty. You can enjoy them as a snack on their own, which is really cool, or toss them into really any dish that you eat. Shiitake mushrooms are mostly dried, and for us, we sell quite a bit of our shiitakes fresh. Anything that doesn't get sold fresh, or if we do want to do some dried, we just dry it in our drying room. We also occasionally offer like a shiitake powder. We can dry the stems and powder the stems. A lot of people will use the stem of the shiitake for like a stock. So, because the stem of the shiitake is actually very tough and really chewy. So mainly you're after the cap with this mushroom. So you can do a lot with the stem. The stem also has nutritional benefits just like the cap. So it's definitely recommended to get the most out of it. Yeah, this mushroom has a really nice woodsy, almost smoky flavor that a lot of people enjoy. A lot of people enjoy, including myself. This could be, any mushroom could be great for vegans or vegetarians, I think, or I know that. This one is, you can really utilize it. I mean, I would say this one has a distinct flavor. It's definitely unique. It's not as a meat. I think the lion's mane and like the trumpet are really good. Like you could shred them up and create like a pulled pork. Really get like a meatiness out of those. These ones have their own flavor. It's like robust, meaty, pairs well. I mean, pastas, stuff like that. Instead of eating a steak, you can just do shiitakes. Kind of, it has a meatiness to it, a nice smoky meatiness to it that really pairs well with a lot of things. And I would consider it a great meat replacement. A lot of these gourmet mushrooms contain up to 30 grams of protein per quarter-pound serving, so or 6-ounce serving. So you can get a lot of protein from them, as well as essential vitamins and other goodies that they offer. The lion's mane is super meaty. It has like a kind of like a crab-like texture, some people say. One of my restaurants uses it in a taco recipe, and I think it makes an excellent taco. We've done shiitake tacos as well, and they also make really good mushroom tacos. Just depends on what flavor you're after. So shiitake has a nice distinct flavor. I think it pairs best with Pan-Asian style cuisine or Asian style cuisine, stir fries, fried rices, soups like misos and ramens. I really like to use shiitake in that kind of perspective. It's a common mushroom. A lot of people are familiar with shiitake, so it's been a staple in diets for quite a while. I believe shiitake was first cultivated or brought here in a commercial sense in the 80s, so it's still about 35 years since the shiitakes were really brought out in a commercial way. But they've been grown in like Japan and China for quite a long time. On the USDA agriculture sheet, the price sheet, shiitakes are a little bit more expensive than oysters. They average about like $4.50 a pound on like a commercial wholesale price average, which is super cheap for the grower that's just growing them for a local market, where they average in a local setting, I would say between $8 to $12 a pound for like wholesale prices or grocery stores. So it's still quite cheap for the mushroom, and since it takes so long to grow. Oysters, you're basically averaging about the same price, and you can grow them much faster. So a lot of people do just stick with like an oyster mushroom because you're really getting close to the same price, and you can produce 4 crops in the same amount of time as you can produce one of these. we just have a lot of space, and we do like growing the shiitake. So I have another warehouse set aside just for the shiitake incubation. So they have their own incubation warehouse, and then we can do our oyster mushrooms and our lion's mane and our fast fruiting strains here in our other warehouse, our other warehouse. So we'll do like oyster mushrooms, lion's mane, piopini, stuff like that in our fast fruiting section, even chestnut. And then shiitake, since it takes 2 to 3 months, most of the time we're letting our blocks go for 3 months before even getting them into the grow room. So that does it. So if you don't have much space and you're looking for a mushroom to grow and you're thinking you want to go crazy with shiitake, definitely grow a few blocks and try it out, but definitely don't try to, you know, it'll take up a lot of incubation space. So take that into account. Be aware of that, and you'll be good to go. I just started growing shiitake because I just like to grow, but I do notice people buy it often, and it's an easy sell. People are very familiar with shiitake. I think that the best thing you could do is, a lot of people say don't do it, is try to focus on growing one strain and perfect it. I just started growing as many strains as I can, and I like growing variety. I feel like it's better for me, and I'm able to offer more options for people or clients. So I like the fact that we grow a lot of variety. Throughout the year we can rotate through, you know, up to 20 different strains of mushrooms, and we do really well with them. I just started growing shiitake because I was really interested in it, and I just started experimenting with small batches at home. I was sterilizing all my blocks in a 41.5 quart All-American pressure sterilizer. So I would do, you know, 30 shiitake blocks a week, and on top of that I was sterilizing every day and doing production every day. I did about 36 to 40 blocks a day. So at one of my production days I would just set aside a shiitake day. And I wanted to get familiar with the growth of it because I was really interested in shiitake, just because I thought it was a really fascinating mushroom and wanted to learn how it grows and basically learn. That's it. I noticed though that shiitake's a great farmer's market mushroom or like a grocery store mushroom. It doesn't do as well with like chefs. They'd rather get something more exotic, or maybe it's the fact that they can get some cheaper shiitake from a Chinese grower, I don't know, or from a bigger distributor that grows them at a wider level than me. But most of the time they want something more exotic, like the lion's mane, the chestnuts, the piopini, some colored oyster mushroom variety, whether it be pink or blue, gold. But the shiitakes do excellent at a farmer's market, and if you can get in with a grocery store, they do great there. It's a common mushroom. You know, for gourmet mushrooms, it's like our gourmet portobello or button because everybody knows about shiitake. This is my second grow room, and this is my shiitake and my reishi mushroom grow room. I grow in this grow room for shiitake because it does have a lower speed fan setting for the exhaust. All the other rooms are more high powered. Grow room 3 has its own exclusive air system, so that one I can really utilize to just power out some oyster mushrooms, and I do lion's mane very well in there. I can get the teeth to grow out very long, and it's just perfect. So each room's dialed in to their own specific species. So grow room 1 does piopini and chestnut. It also does oyster mushrooms very well. Grow room 3 does my lion's mane and oyster mushrooms, and then this grow room I use for shiitake, and I'll do reishi mushrooms in here as well. So these mushrooms do really well in there, and it's just because it has a lower, room maintains like a little bit of a higher CO2 level, parts per million. It probably stays around 500 in this room, and then the other rooms are about 400. So at this point we let our reishi mushrooms just grow out completely in the bag, and then when we want to initiate the conch formation, we'll just load them into the grow room. And let's see. And I'll just do reishi all on the top shelf of my grow room. So that way the mushrooms have enough room and space to grow out properly. So this is the Ganoderma lucidum. This is the Cincy stricto. I believe this is a California origin, but very nice. It produces these beautiful conchs and very nice thick stems. Good for teas, so you'll just boil these up. You can boil them fresh, 30 minutes. Like I said, this mushroom is very tough, has a very thick cell wall. And chitin is actually the same substance that the crab shells are made out of, and hard materials like that. So you can notice the very hard structure of the shell of this mushroom. And all mushrooms have like a chitin cell wall. So that's what we're essentially trying to break down so we can access the medicinal qualities or the nutritional benefits of our mushrooms. It's recommended that you cut them with scissors. If you try harvesting them with your hand, you're likely to rip out some substrate and it won't be as clean of a harvest. So we just use these scissors to get a clean, efficient harvest on our shiitake crop. Wax paper is good because it kind of locks in that moisture so your mushrooms don't dry out when they're in the fridge. So I'll just put a layer on top. Keeps them pretty fresh. And if you don't use like wax paper and you try to use like another paper that's not like wax coated, then I've seen like the mushrooms try to like eat through them, or they'll try to grow onto like a paper because they love wood-based substrates. So most paper is made out of wood, right? So your mushrooms will try to grow onto that. These boxes are sent to wholesalers. They go to Shamrock Foods, Peddler's Son, or AJ's Fine Foods. So it's an outlet of grocery stores out here in Phoenix that you can get these mushrooms from. And then that's basically why we use these boxes. We can sell them in lots of 5 pounds, or as with oysters, we do 3.5 pounds per case. Since the oyster is such a fragile mushroom, it grows out in these big clusters. So trying to put 5 pounds in our boxes can get you can damage your mushroom, so we just try to keep it nice. But every other mushroom, really about 5 pounds, goes in a box, and then from there we have a few wholesalers come pick them up, or we'll deliver them out. We also deliver to our own restaurant clients, so we'll just drop these boxes off with a restaurant after they put in an order, depending on what species they get, and everybody's happy. And then we'll also use them just to store our mushrooms in general. We'll bring them out and sell them at the farmer's market right out of the box. So these ones are ready to produce spores now, actually. These mushrooms, if you wanted to take a spore print, you could just take the cap off of this stem and lay it onto a piece of foil, and the mushroom is actually sending out spores as we speak. A lot of them are microscopic, but sometimes if you look at them in the right light and you look at it like a mushroom block, you can see little plumes of smoke drifting from under the mushrooms, and that's tons of spores just traveling off of our mushrooms. I actually just saw some spores just drifting off right now. So you can get a lot of spores from these mushrooms. They're actively producing spores as we speak. Yeah, and that's what I do. I just drop some on a piece of aluminum foil. I dropped the cap on a piece of aluminum foil, covered it with a quart-sized jar. The next day I came in and there was a nice little white spore print. Depending on each species of mushroom, you get a different colored spore print depending on the species or strain. So like our pink oyster mushroom produces a pink spore print. Shiitakes produce a white one. The chestnut mushroom produces like a chestnut brown spore. Piopinos also produce a chocolate brown colored spore. The lion's mane produces a white spore. So we get some different colorations with our spores. After taking a spore print, I am able to go into the laboratory, and with a syringe filled with some sterilized water, I can scrape the spores into a clean little unused petri dish that's sterile as well, and throw some water in there and suck it right back up into my syringe. And from there I actually planted it on some petri dishes the other day, and now I already have some fresh mushroom mycelium growing from the spores. So I just restarted my basically just restarted from a new culture that I'm going to be isolating from. Because usually I just take from already pre-grown cultures and they last for a few years, but every few years you recommended that I start back from spores. So, I mean, depending on how long your cultures last, about every 5 years or so, you can go back to a spore print and look for a new strain, or try to develop something new and isolate it. And then from there, store that in a slant or a petri dish, and then you can have access to that strain for years to come. That's what I'm going to be doing. So yeah, these mushrooms are already producing spores as soon as the cap begins to flatten out. So something like this right here isn't producing as many spores, but you might get some spores from it. But mushrooms like these are producing lots of spores at this point. So these new genetics that I'm taking from Spore, they'll be very unique, they'll be different. So I'll definitely have to do some selecting to look for the most aggressive strain and also the best quality producers. I want to make sure that it does a good yield for me and produces some beautiful looking mushrooms. And also what I might do is I grow out the spore. Well, I have the spores germinated on petri dishes. The mycelium will grow out. I will transfer sectors of it to new plates. Once those are grown out, I will inoculate sterilized grain, spawn, then actually grow it out onto production blocks like this. And then from there, I can look for the best looking mushroom on my production block and then take that mushroom into my lab and clone it by taking a piece of tissue from the center of the mushroom and planting that on a petri dish. And from that point, I will successfully isolate a mushroom strain specific to where each and every mushroom that I grow out in my facility will be a clone of that mushroom and have the desirable genetic traits and yield that I'm looking for. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah, my 3782 is actually from a clone. It's from 2017. So just the other day, I took a spore print and I felt like it's time to just add another strain to the library and just have something new. Most of the time with shiitake, we actually flip our blocks upside down. No mushrooms grow out of the top. So this is when our mushrooms are sitting on the incubation. This is actually the top of our bag. So when we put it into fruiting, we just flip it upside down. All the mushrooms grow out of the bottom. I think that could be possible to gravity when the mushroom block is colonizing. Maybe most of the moisture might be collecting down at the bottom just from like condensation and whatnot. Mushrooms will pin and form mushrooms wherever they sense the most humidity. So we just flip them upside down. That way we're not getting mushrooms growing all on the bottoms of our blocks when we're in there trying to harvest. So get better fruits. The fact that you see more agaricus mushrooms, which would be your button mushrooms, your comini, your portobello mushrooms, the reason why you see most of those on your dinner plates and I feel like in grocery stores is the fact that there's such a huge force behind the industry that are cultivating them. It's a $1 billion industry. So they're super mass produced and they're able to achieve really high yields in like small spaces. They're also, it's interesting, they're not as nutritional as like a wood-loving mushroom. So like your buttons and creminis and all those agaricus species are mainly cultivated on compost and manure-based substrates. Wood-loving species are definitely more nutritional than what you'd get from a button, portobello, or cremini. They are known to contain like high levels of beta-glucans and polysaccharides and also a lot of other compounds that are good for us, like shiitakes produce lentinin. It's also anti-cancer and anti-tumor, which you'll find with a lot of the wood-loving species. They are really utilized, they've been utilized in a lot of medicinal aspects, ranging from like cancer treatments and dealing with fatigue and chemotherapy. To even our lion's mane or lion's mane mushrooms in general that can help with just the overall brain function, cognitive function, memory, focus. The fact that it contains like hericenones and erinacines that can repair nerve growth and neurons in the brain is really outstanding. And there's so much to the world of mushrooms that you can find with hardwood loving species compared to just agaricus. So, but I'm not gonna hate on any of the mushrooms. I mean, mushrooms are all good, but I'm pulled to specialty mushrooms. I think it's not the norm with seeing now we're starting to see more growers pop up, but I feel like agaricus mushrooms were widely commercialized a lot before hardwood loving and specialty mushrooms were. So there's a lot of big key players in the industry that are able to cultivate over 1 million pounds of agaricus mushrooms every month, and those make their way to a lot of grocery stores. They're mass produced, so you see them on every shelf, and you don't see much of the specialty mushrooms. A lot of growers have been known to ship in ready to fruit like shiitake blocks from China and grow those. I know like 85% of the world's mushrooms are cultivated in shiitake for like specialty mushrooms. So we're starting to see more of this growth out here in the United States. So more growers are growing a lot of different species, and there's a lot more diversity coming out. So it's really cool. I wouldn't want to grow compost-loving mushrooms just because the storage of all the compost. Like, I can grow these specialty mushrooms in like small spaces. I can grow them in warehouses, and I can set up these growing rooms that are really nice and clean. Then I don't have to deal with manure all the time and getting truckloads of manure sent to me. I can utilize local hardwood waste, and also, if that's not available, I can get hardwood pellets that can be rehydrated and turned into my substrate. So storage is easy. I can store things on pallets with no smell. I don't have to walk into my facility and smell a bunch of compost, which would not be good for my lab is in the warehouse next door. So that would bring contamination into my grow. So you got to be really careful when you're growing compost-loving mushrooms, for the fact that it takes a lot more space. The fact that those mushrooms usually average at about $1 per pound or less. You're not going to get much money unless you're able to really mass produce them. So the guys that are growing like 1 million pounds a week, they're able to really dominate the market. There's no room for anybody else, because you're gonna, unless there's a really good local market for you that's willing to pay top dollar for, locally grown button and cremini, then I would say to get your foot in the door the right way, start with like an oyster mushroom and really maximize your space and the use of materials that are around you. And then from there, one day, if you get the space and you want to really enter in the agaricus market, then you can look into it. But I think there's plenty of agaricus out there. Well, as I was reading a few years ago, up to 85% of the world's mushroom supply is coming from China. China just has for a long time been just a leading producer worldwide for mushrooms. So a lot of people have learned a lot from Chinese cultivation practices, but the fact that a lot of mushrooms are coming from China definitely says something that we need to start growing more food here and teaching people about this so we can access good food. I've read reports where mushrooms coming from China were shown to be sprayed with sodium phosphates and whatnot to make them appear or keep their whiteness and freshness longer. So that's like going against what we're supposed to be eating mushrooms for, and we're supposed to be eating them to remove toxins and pollutants from our body, not to put them in there. So it's one of the good reasons why I like doing this, is I can just give people healthy access to good food. I think it's mind-blowing. A lot of shiitake, for one, was cultivated in China a long time ago, and in Japan as well. But they found that like cutting down the trees that had shown fruitings of shiitake mushrooms and striking them, as well as soaking them in water, provided essential fruitings. Also, China has like the landscape and environment where mushrooms can grow in these really unique basically farms, where they're able to fruit all the mushrooms on logs outside in like hoop frame tents, where there's really no artificial supplementation at all. Everything is totally natural for the fact that the humidity is just out in the mountains, and they have the tents really wide and open, and air is able to travel through them really nicely. So yeah, China is just a place where they have been cultivating mushrooms for a long time, and they have huge farms as well that just pump out lots of mushrooms. I think the fact that they have such a really huge population, they've learned to cultivate a lot of food for a lot of people.